Hear ye, hear ye. Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Today I want to recommend Daniel O'Brien's How to Fight Presidents. When I first got into writing about historic failures, I was a huge fan of the guys over at Cracked.com, especially back when their show After Hours was the thing. How to Fight Presidents is hilarious and one of my favorite books on Audible. In fact, it was a pretty big influence in my decision to write about the American presidents. First on my blog and then later with Ben Thompson in our book, Not So Great Presidents, which, FYI, just so happens to be on Audible. So, yeah. Anywho, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/epicfails with a K. Again, that's audibletrial.com/EPIK fails for your free audiobook. Oh, and before I forget, all 4 Epic Fails books are now available on Audible, including Not So Great Presidents, by myself, Eric Slater, and Ben Thompson. Huzzah!
Hey there, siblings! I'm Stephen White.
And I'm Lacey Finley,
The host of Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo.
Ugh, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
It gets easier the more you say it.
Each week we discuss all the big headlines in gaming.
We also do game reviews, developer interviews, and retrospectives on the industry.
All of this while going on multiple tangents about whatever strikes us in the moment.
Hey, listen, did you happen to watch that TV show I recommended to you?
Stephen, focus.
Oh, right. Follow Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo on Twitter and Instagram.
And find Super Mega Crash Brothers Turbo wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Yo, this is Kory with The World is My Burrito podcast, aka Twimby, a personal project where I educate my listeners as I dive into various pop culture topics that alter the world around them, yet somehow fell to the wayside. Do you know who almost single-handedly created the manga industry of today? Which major world event changed the horror film industry as a whole? How did comics affect the world's perception of nuclear energy? Journey with me to learn some random stuff.
Joining me is Eric Slater. My name is Chris Carroll, and this is Comic Zombie.
I freeze. I'm Batman.
I'm the Juggernaut!
So, Batman kills a lot of people in this movie.
Dude, he kills so many people in this movie.
They had the Hal Jordan Green Lantern, but one of the alternates was the John Stewart Green Lantern.
Yep.
And they even did the animated voice.
Yep, Phil Lamar.
Back when Stan was writing those books, they were 15 pages or 17 pages, and you get it done in one issue and you're out the door.
Yeah.
Bendis took 6 issues to tell Amazing Fantasy 15.
I'm just laughing as I'm saying it because it sounds stupid.
Wasn't he designed by Jim Lee? And I love me some Walking Dead.
I just feel bad for the poor bastard that has to ring that bell. It stares, bro.
And I'm certain I'm not going to be surprising anybody with this one because I think this is universally recognized as the worst superhero game, much less comic book game, much less maybe even video game. Superman 64.
Days of Future Past in the comic, everyone you know is dead.
It's pretty dark right out the gate.
Alfred may be a good butler, but he is the worst secret keeper of all time.
We're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff, ranging from comics to movies to TV shows, all kinds of stuff that we like, that we don't like. Probably be a little bit more vocal about the stuff that we don't like. I'm looking right at you, Halle Berry's Catwoman. Anyway, comiczombie.net. Check it out, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks.
Comic Zombie.
I'm wondering if there is actually pricing, because I feel like this is just French prostitution history, but not actual. What's weird, they have hours. They have the hours.
Like the hourly rate?
Like days and hours of operation, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. in Paris, Monday to Saturday, closing during Sunday Mass and Holy Week.
You realize you just screwed up your search history for a long time.
Yeah, you're getting put on all kinds of lists.
What are your ads going to be? Merkins?
Hot singles in my area, I hope.
There's an app for that. So welcome back to Epic Fails of History.
We're back. Thanks for listening to Epic Fails of History.
Zutano.
Okay, so all of this built up from the courts to the taxes, everything literally built up to a head on July 14th, 1789, now known in France as Bastille Day. So this is how it gets to be. They stormed the Bastille. Now, to give you some background, the Bastille was originally a big-ass castle in the middle of Paris that's been held over for a long period of time It's been used as a garrison. It was a prison. It was a storage center. It was the seat of military power in the city. And
it was pretty intimidating looking too. This thing was big, right? Like
it was 3 to 4 stories tall. I mean, it wasn't. There was some stuff that was actually, believe it or not, pushed up against the area. Like Paris had grown up by this point. They were using wood structure, and they got it pretty well done. It was, I mean, Paris was a revolutionary city. I mean, they didn't have the Eiffel Tower because they didn't come till metal. But, you know, the area has...
Skyscrapers were not a thing in the 1700s.
You also got to think this was a brick fortress with cannonades and stuff. So when fires hit the city, it was never affected by anything. This thing has been around for a while. And, again, seat of power, a big resentment. There was overseen by Governor de Launay. He actually didn't work out of the fortress, out of the Bastille, but he did work with the people in the Bastille. Now, keep in mind, giant castle, middle of Paris, used as a prison, so people already hated it. And there was, at the time, 82 French, they called them Invalides. I don't speak French, but they were the rejects of the French military. They were either on their way out, they were broken, or they were retiring. It's kind of like what the beef eaters are now, the people who control like the Tower in London.
Oh, okay.
So these were the retirees of the military. And for some reason, they also had 32 Swiss grenadiers in there. They were mercenaries that, Louis was like, hey, I'm going to need some extra help from professional soldiers. So this thing had 14 people in this castle in the middle of Paris, guns pointed at the people, and it was holding 7 prisoners in it. So it wasn't even like a fully stacked prison that they need to like get all these people out to help with the revolution. No, there were 7 prisoners, including 4 forgers, 1 maniac, literally crazy person, a guy being held there by his dad. He had the king sign a little form saying, hey, put this guy away instead of send him into trial. And if they had come 10 days earlier, it would have been 8 people, that being the Marquis de Sade. You know, the guy with the big weird sex stuff, married like his 14-year-old cousin.
Marquis de Sade.
So,
oh man,
Marquis
that's
de
a
Sade.
story.
There you go. So, I mean, it is a symbol of the French military and the French power, but it wasn't in actuality being used for anything besides gunpowder storage. Now, the governor at the time did make the decision to pull all the gunpowder from outside storage areas and bring it back into the Bastille because he thought there was going to be a revolution. Well, spoiler alert, dude, you got raided. So, starting and that morning, about 2,000-3,000 people showed up outside demanding that the soldiers give over their guns and arms and all that gunpowder. And everyone refused. There were some negotiations, people let in, and then someone shot or died. No one really knows the exact what happened. But there was a small pitched battle. And, I mean, you got to think there's 114 people in this castle and like 18 cannons, so this should be well manned. But they didn't really want to actually start a war in the middle of Paris. But the people who were riding set up a cannon in the park next door, aimed at this thing, and were just taking pot shots at it. So there was already a battle going on, and the soldiers weren't fighting back. Delaunay originally decided, hey, you know what? I'm just going to blow up all the gunpowder. Screw you guys. I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna take all you out. No one's getting it. And then they finally stepped down, and then he was let out, and then he was stabbed. And I think his dying words were, just kill me and get it over with. And someone killed him and got it over with. So, starting that morning all the way through 5:30 p.m., it took 1,000 people threatening to kill everybody for them to take it over. And this is a castle. They could have lasted in there for weeks, but they didn't have the rations, the stores. Also, the Swiss were professionals, and they're like, we're not getting paid enough for this. We were paid just to stand here. To be honest, take it back. Not to make it too political, this is kind of like them rushing over the Capitol building. They literally just came in and in 12 hours took over one of the most powerful symbols of the French monarchy, and then they tore it down brick by brick.
The difference being that they were a little bit more organized, had more of a well thought out plan and reason for what they were doing.
They got supplies from the armory too, because weren't they basically they still couldn't compete with the actual French military, so that was one of the reasons why they went here, is because they could get gunpowder and guns. And
now the armory itself was pretty lackluster. Again, remember the staff and the garrison itself was the Invalides. They didn't actually have a lot of firepower, but they had a lot of gunpowder. That's really what drew the revolution forward. The guns and even the cannon, they did take all the cannons and pretty much, guys just walking away with a cannon. These are small cannons. They're mounted on the top. These weren't like the big 32 pounders. These were 2 pounders. But they were helpful, but it was the gunpowder that was the driving factor of taking over this garrison.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, not to say that recent events were necessarily a parallel, but just the imagery of what happened at the Capitol did kind of remind me of all of this. We've never really seen anything quite like that before. Now, the French Revolution was, I mean, that's like what happened at the Capitol times 100. But yeah, you know, I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, once they raided,
I mean, we like in our lifetime, we have never experienced a revolution in America.
No,
I mean,
definitely
several
not.
generations have gone by with nothing resembling an actual revolution.
No.
So yeah, I mean, it's not that it's getting too political. It's just that this is the closest that, you know, you and I have ever seen. And I mean, I'm only like 30 some odd years in. So, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, one fact that did stand out to me, because this was a castle made of brick that, I mean, the cannon made dents in it, but it didn't do much because, again, a thick castle made of brick. 98 attackers died and only 1 defender died. And I think the 1 defender probably died of a heart attack. Again, old guys. So.
Did he tase himself in the balls first? So yeah, you know, this is just, you know, pure chaos at this point. And eventually an angry mob forms and they decide to march on Versailles, on the palace itself. And that's where things really got ugly. The monarchy was basically forced to flee, and they were later captured and held prisoner.
So you don't have it in the notes, but do you know how they were captured?
I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this goes back, like we haven't really spoken a ton yet on Marie Antoinette. Like we have mentioned her. We mentioned the house, but not kind of the spite that the people had for her and why they had it for her. And that's fine. It was honestly to the point where her own mother wrote several letters saying that she loved her, but disapproved of everything about her. So
Man,
imagine Hiccup's dad from How to Train Your Dragon. It's like, you should change this. So the reason why they were caught is because they're like, oh crap. Okay. So, the peasants are here. We need to leave. We gotta go. We need to get out right now. So we're just going to get a carriage. We're going to go, like, it's just going to be a base carriage and we're going to get you out. And Marie Antoinette was like, no, this needs to be the biggest carriage we have. We need to have a dinner in there. It needs to be fully laden and fully dressed. So she got just the most luxurious stuff that they could find and left with it. And yeah, someone saw it and was like, huh, well, that stands out like a sore thumb. And that's how they got caught, because she's so friggin' vain.
That's not inconspicuous at all.
No.
Again,
Yeah,
I do bring up the
sort of-
fact that Marie Antoinette was married off at 14 years old, so she never had a chance to learn how to grow the hell up.
Yeah, that's what I was. She's basically a child bride. I mean, you know, a lot of the monarchy were married around that age anyways, but they, you know, were generally groomed for that kind of role. Generally. Yeah. And when they weren't, a lot of times it was really bad. The more powerful that they were, the worse it got. In this case, you know, the monarchy of France, that's pretty powerful.
The more I learn about her, the more I kind of feel bad for her, because she just had no concept of reality.
Yeah, I mean, you go into royalty at 14, and, you know, there are some negatives because she came from Austria and, like, into France, so she still, you know, barely had a grasp on her own language and was now having to learn, or she had barely a grasp on reality in general and now had to relearn reality in another language. So there are some negatives, but, you know, to be honest, it was honestly more of like the parents just letting her do whatever she wanted, and everyone just accepted it. Like you and me, I feel like if there were a ton of people outside of our house right now with pitchforks and,
yeah,
you know, fire, and, you know, I
Eric
wanted to be
does
like,
live
oh,
in Green Cove Springs. They have both those things.
It's very close. So yeah.
Can confirm, yeah.
So Green Cove Springs, you know, if there are a bunch of people outside Eric's house and Eric's like, oh, no, I need to take, you know, my favorite history book with me. It glows in the dark and there's a giant Sims arrow that points down at my exact location. I would be like, no, we are not taking that. That is essentially what Marie Antoinette did. She's like, no. It has to be showy. We have to be visible.
Put the fireworks on the top of it.
Yeah. My favorite fireworks.
Fireworks, is Justin entering a casino again?
I get that reference. And if you don't get that reference, listen to our recent episode on Podcasters Assemble on James Bond's Skyfall.
Good callback right there.
Speaking of that Skyfall episode, the song at the end is brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Great credits to Kory and his rapping skills.
Absolutely hilarious.
That was pretty amazing.
If you like white people rapping because they were inspired by Weird Al, check it out.
You're Lord and Day, bitch.
Louis and Marie Antoinette, they tried to get away to, I want to say it was Austria or something. Obviously, they stuck out like a sore thumb. They got captured, and Louis was forced to sign the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So despite some of the bloodshed and the chaos, the revolution was somewhat successful at first. During all this, there was a writer named John Paul Marat. I hope I'm saying that right. He was like the voice of the revolution, they called him. And he convinced people that the solution to all their problems was simple: murder. He would eventually call for the execution of hundreds over the course of the next couple years. And he was later murdered, but then martyred, which led to, of course, further bloodshed.
Following the proposition of murder, which is always a good place to start, the September Massacre broke out in 1792 when 1,600 prisoners were slaughtered by crazed revolutionaries. Any enemy of the revolution is made an example of, and many of them were given show trials.
And it was during all this, just as the French janitors were presumably tired of mopping up all the blood, a doctor invented an efficient solution to streamline this entire process: the guillotine.
A doctor.
And, I always imagine there's like this infomercial on primetime TV. It's quick, it's painless, it's clean.
Billy Mays here.
Get your guillotine today. Only 4 easy payments of revolution.
Act now and get a second one free.
I will say the guillotine had an interesting science trick when someone was trying to figure out if someone lived after their head was cut off.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah, you can look into it, but so head was cut off, and the doctor literally stared at the guy's eyes, blink in confusion about, he was dead. So I'd have to look it up, but it's a pretty interesting story. Just Google guillotine stuff, not on your computer or at work.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing stuff. At the time, they saw this as a good thing. They thought it was more humane than, I guess, taking an axe to someone's neck, which I guess makes sense. I mean, you could always miss.
Seriously, as bad as the guillotine is, if you had a choice between an axe execution or a guillotine, I'd be like, I don't even care if it's that sharp, guillotine. Even those giant executioners' swords and axes, they had to be as sharp as can be. And then even then, you got to think about all the tissue in your neck and your spine. Decapitate somebody with one shot. It's not like a movie. That's not like got it in one swing. A lot of times they'd swing too low, like get him in the back, or swing too high and like get him in the skull. And it dude, there's stories of them taking like 12, 13 swings to get someone killed.
Oof.
So I'll debate you on this. I think if you so the ones for the royalty, sometimes they really wanted the person to suffer. But you're talking about a professional guy who kills people. Or, and also cleans up the bodies. And he's probably shunned by the community, but this is his job. He takes it professionally. The guillotine was set up by peasants to kill their overlords. They probably didn't get that head in the right position every single time either. So, yes, I realize that this thing is a giant blade weighed down. They pull the chain. But, sometimes you don't even get the mandolin working correctly in your kitchen. So,
oof.
I can barely use a slap chop, so the guillotine wouldn't be out of question for me.
Yeah,
Kory, the name is in the name. Slap chop.
Sometimes I just miss. What can I say?
Exactly.
And so this was kind of a symptom of like the Industrial Revolution. There was a lot of things, it was just they were trying to make things more efficient. And the problem is when you make executions more efficient, you can do them more often. So it got a little out of hand.
Of the guillotine.
Oh, thank you. Half the time those things didn't really work.
How was it, honey?
They couldn't finish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I gotta go back tomorrow.
Oh, well, I made cabbage for dinner.
Yeah, that would be the ending to this day.
During all this, Robespierre, who actually used to argue against the death penalty, he ended up becoming the guillotine's most outspoken supporter overnight.
This is a 1984 type thing, because, once you start killing off people, you're like, well, I can kill this guy, too. I can kill this guy, too.
That's the thing. Yeah, one thing leads to another, and then you're just mad with power, and,
Yeah,
anyone
this guy
who looks at you the wrong way.
Cut his head off.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I will not sing much praise to Gundam Wing because as a long-standing Gundam fan, but there is this very, very interesting conversation that I loved where Treize Khushrenada argues about why they chose mobile suits. And he goes through the history of mankind, and it's like mankind used to use bombs, and that's not beautiful. Like, it's easy. It's very easy because you're very detached. And he's like, there's nothing noble about using bombs. So that's why we use mobile suits, because it is much more difficult. It makes the task of killing harder and also a lot more exciting. So yeah, it's
maybe
like
there's something to be said of that, though, I guess.
Yeah, where like the guillotine made things easy. So yes, there was a craze of power until, one organization comes in and says, okay, yes to the killing, but no to the bombing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just too haphazard and too crazy.
I wonder if you could say the same thing about drones. I don't know.
Though I feel like right now they're more used for like precision and less for just mass.
Ideally.
I mean, it's not like, napalm bombing Vietnam or Japan.
Yeah,
those
true.
are more of like a precision thing.
I can't wait till into the future we forsake global battles for wars of single combat, like in Robot Jocks.
Yeah, I am all about robot battles, and Japan is 100% of the way there.
Yeah. I mean, they got that massive, was it Gundam?
They have,
Gundam?
Yeah. They have a fully functional
like a six-story
RX-78-2 Gundam.
That's nuts.
That is operated by a man.
Well, back to the topic at hand. In 1793, Louis XVI was tried and declared guilty of treason, and the sentence was death. After being walked up to the scaffold, Louis attempted to give a dignified speech of remorse, but was drowned out by the booing crowd calling for his head.
Test the guillotine! Holy shit! Wait a minute! Last request! What is your last request? Yes, Novocaine. There is no such thing known to medical science.
I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't want to be in that splash zone. So following the execution of their monarchs, those in charge became increasingly paranoid. They renamed themselves the Committee of Public Safety and suspended the Constitution, abolished the Catholic Church, instituted a secret police, and started rounding up random citizens for the most mundane of crimes, including but not limited to a lack of enthusiasm.
Well, so, shit, we're all dead now.
What does that even mean? Like, a lack of enthusiasm for what? Support of the committee?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, these guys just became extreme,
Gotcha.
It's the live long enough to see yourself become the villain. So
100%.
After they got rid of nobility, they became the new vision of nobility. So it's like, well, there's no one in charge, so we're in charge. Hey, let's do what the nobility did.
Yeah, exactly. At first, I think it started out that they were trying to get revenge a little bit on the nobility, and then it just kind of spiraled from there.
It's so strange because you never hear of anybody who institutes a secret police abusing power.
Right. But I love the fact that they call themselves the Committee of Public Safety. Like, it's the least evil sounding thing, but it's the most malicious thing I've ever read about.
You don't act right. You're going to find yourself in an unsafe position here, buddy.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So at this point, this is what historians term the Reign of Terror. Like, it completely got out of control.
Yeah, this is when you think of the French Revolution, this is what people are thinking about, is the Reign of Terror, where it was like kind of like the Red Scare in the 50s in America, but like a million times worse. Someone was like, or like the witch trials. It's kind of like that. Like, all someone had to just, oh yeah, he's, seditionist or whatever. Like, no evidence whatsoever. Like, put him on up there,
Yeah. And it was during this time, thousands were marched off to the guillotine. Robespierre, he lost his mind. And he was quoted at saying during this time, terror without virtue is disastrous, but virtue without terror is powerless. That's a supervillain quote right there.
Yeah. Some Lex Luthor shit, dude.
But, I mean, he was crazy because...
It's over the top.
Like you said, I mean, if he's a raving lunatic and mass slaughter is not bad enough, right? Robespierre also invented his own religion to replace Christianity, which Christianity was a main course in Europe at that time. It was either you're Orthodox, not Orthodox, or like a Hun or something. So they were worshiping the goddess of reason. I mean, that's some Kim Jong-un shit right there. And then sponsored his own holiday, the Festival of Supreme Being.
Yep.
But wait, on top of that, he added so much crap to the French. Have you guys ever heard of decimal time?
No.
Decimal time was
No.
instituted this. They broke down the day into, how is it? The day is at 10 decimal hours, which each decimal hour is 100 decimal minutes, and each decimal minute is 100 decimal seconds. But it's not the same, like, time, like 1 second's not 1 second. It's not just doesn't add up that way. But they were trying to make it easier and more egalitarian. So it didn't really matter. They didn't really have time zones at the time, but they really wanted to like break down like the reason. Like, we're going to follow everything with math and science and law, and also you have to listen to me or I'll kill you. So
They're trying to make time metric.
Yeah.
Yeah. But metric time is a whole separate thing than decimal time. But yeah, decimal time was the start of, I mean, there's some crazy stuff. Now, the Chinese invented it, but the French ruined it.
Thanks, France.
Hey, we didn't ruin something for once.
I was not expecting ruined it. That was hilarious.
So if all that's not bad enough, during these festivities, this holiday that he made up, Robespierre, this is not a joke, he symbolically descended from a papier-mâché mountain clad in angelic robes and proceeded to present a scroll with a new hit list of enemies against the Republic. And it was during this that they literally like stopped him mid-speech and carted him off before he could finish reading it.
So that is wild because that sounds very similar, not exactly, but there are a lot of similarities in that and Sander Cohen in BioShock. Yeah, in Fort Frolic, because there are a lot of people who are covered in, what could be clay or possibly like paper mache. And when you first meet him, he descends from a staircase, but he is it's kind of much like this person. Sander Cohen did not have to lose his mind in Rapture. His mind was already gone in the real world. But Rapture, and actually, yeah, God, I guess there are a lot of similarities.
That could be a good metaphor, yeah.
Yeah, Robespierre was not sane to begin with, but this did not help. So yeah, no, that's just kind of wild to read that. Oh, hey, the goddess of reason. Right. So that actually brings up one of the things that I did mention earlier that was not listed in here. The cult of reason, the cult de la raison. So they took over a couple of different buildings. One of note, in 1793, Notre Dame was damaged, plundered, and briefly converted by the cult of reason, who threw a party called the Fête of Reason, which, I mean, fête is just party.
Yeah.
So there are carved heads that are in Notre Dame, and the people thought they were supposed to be the kings of France, so they like destroyed them. I mean, they were just heads, so they like beheaded and smashed and whatever. But they were actually the kings of Israel, so a little bit of displaced anger.
Wow, that's nuts.
But they took over a couple of different areas, basically for giant, lit fam parties.
That's nuts.
Yeah, you got to think of all the church property they would have taken over, much less the noblemen's houses.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of what kind of fueled their paranoia to kind of maintain control was that all of Europe was controlled by monarchs. So there was a lot of pressure on France during this time, and they really felt they had to prove themselves, I guess. And I think maybe that kind of pushed them to where they went with all this, establishing, control through religion and all that kind of stuff, or at least trying to.
And not only that, all the monarchs were pretty much intermarried with each other. So if you go to war with a country that's not yours, you might be into a First World War type situation where someone be like, shit, that's my third cousin. I better go help him out because they might be coming for my head next. So yeah, they try to maintain control over their country and say, hey, no, we got control. Don't worry about the monarch. We got control. We won't piss you off. Don't piss us off. So.
Exactly.
You got to think, we were backed by them during the Revolutionary War, and now they're doing their own thing. So Britain obviously could have stepped up to the plate, but they are a sea away. And this is back before, they had the tube.
So during his captivity, Robespierre attempted suicide, but failed. So they actually helped him finish the job with his own guillotine. So he's the one that kind of started it, and his life was ended by it.
That's so nice of them.
That's
being
called
so
poetic
thoughtful.
justice.
It's
exactly.
the perfect gift.
And then, of course, because of all of this chaos, it was during this time that a young general by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte, perhaps you've heard of him, he ended up rising through the ranks and ended up taking control because just the situation was right for it, for someone to step up. But that's like that's a whole nother topic for another day. that could be like 3 episodes alone.
Because there's 3 revolutions of itself.
Yeah, and so another thing worth pointing out is that there wasn't just one French Revolution. There were several. So yeah, this is just the beginning.
Everyone always confuses this revolution for the one in Les Miserables, but no,
that was like
what?
the second or third? I think it was the third French Revolution.
Then join in the fight that will give you the right to be free. Do you hear the people sing? Sing the song of angry men. It is the music of the people who will not be slaves again. When the beating of your heart echoes the beating of the drums, there is a life about to summon tomorrow.
So do you guys think that anything like this could ever happen here in the U.S.? Like to this scale, I should say.
We can only hope that someone overthrows us, because I'm getting tired of everybody in all of our various governments.
Realistically, I think if
the wealth inequality just kept getting worse, because that's basically what caused this situation.
I don't think it needs to be I feel like we could have an overthrow of a revolution of our own, but it doesn't necessarily need to be wealth inequality. It could be perpetuated by the wealthy, but I do think probably the best example, specifically the events that happened on January 6th, that had nothing to do with wealth inequality. Yeah. It was perpetuation of kind of a false narrative. And that's all you really need. Because I feel like the way that history has done things before, people are just finding new ways to kind of cause the same thing. The long and the short of it's like people are being pitted red versus blue, Republicans versus Democrats, when it's like, no, we've actually got a lot in common with each other. But much like, King Louis, there's a very vast difference between us and the people who are supposed to be helping us, those who are in leadership. But yeah, you have one guy who took advantage of people who go onto conspiracy theory sites and 8chan.
Right. Yeah.
And they eat it up. And like, I personally know at least one person who eats, two people who eat that stuff up, only one of which I know would willingly act. And it's just like, yeah, no, I can see this happening. It would take a while. I don't think we'll ever see it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But I never expected the events of the 6th to happen in my lifetime. So
definitely,
who knows what wonders are in our future.
I mean, if you wanted to talk about places that we almost got revolutions, go back to Occupy Wall Street, go back to the BLM protests. Like it's not just right or left. I think it would be some sort of inequity that never gets fully solved. And then you get, say, either majority of the states behind it or the troops behind it that would say, hey, we've had enough of whatever our leaders are doing. Now, will we replace it with a straight republic again? Or will we try to go to some sort of, commune society? That's something to be determined. But I mean, I would say as part of, I participated in Occupy Wall Street, and that was 2009, 10 through 12. So there's
I think so.
People made their voices known, and it was very popular with people who even didn't participate. But you're going to need get that groundswell. Like, say for some reason student loans are not forgiven, but if they say, oh yeah, no, we're bankrupt unless we collect them all, so now everyone's in forbearance or something like that. Like, that would be something that would really piss off over 60% of the U.S. population who have student loans. So you're going to have some sort of groundswell that more than half people are over it. That you got to look at the dirty peasant class. So look to Chris first and see what he likes.
I think a lot of people have sort of how would I put that? They
looking
have sort
at
of
life through rose-colored glasses.
Well, they have an idyllic view of the American Revolution, and the thing is, the American Revolution wasn't a true revolution in the same way the French Revolution was. The American colonists did not overthrow the king on his land. You know what I mean? They became independent. With the French Revolution, they literally overthrew the monarchy. They took over the whole country. So it's a little bit different in that way. And I think sometimes people don't really think of it like that.
It's significantly different what we did, because when America declared independence, it essentially became, rather than a revolution, it became a war against an invading army or an occupying army.
We were fighting on our land, on our home front.
Right, exactly. and they had to ship supplies and blah, 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 blah. That's a whole different conversation.
Between us,
Right, but it would be like if the American Revolution was, we overthrew President Woodrow Wilson or something, and it was like President Craig, whoever happened to sit behind the seat in the Oval Office becomes president.
Yeah.
dumb, Craig.
Thankfully, it's never been anything close to that. Although at times maybe it would feel like, sure, it'd be nice if somebody would. I think if people are not together enough or not stupid enough to try it, or maybe hopefully a few of them realize like I could do something about it, but I don't have any kind of plan. I have like one action planned out, and the rest I'm winging it. You know, that's never. Yeah, that's just going to be bad.
All right, so I had a few trivia questions for you guys, if you're ready for it.
Hit me.
All right, this first one's kind of a giveaway because we already talked about it, but what year did the French Revolution begin?
Let's say 1783.
Any other guesses?
Wasn't it like 1787?
1789.
Ah.
Look at that.
Close. So how many French revolutions were there?
Let's just say 5. That's a good number. 5.
Any others? Lower or higher?
Ooh, I'll say 7. I'm going to stick with 7.
Okay. How about you, Chris?
Sorry. I'll split the difference and say 6.
All right. So I think Justin had it. You said 5?
Yeah, just threw it out there.
So the real answer is it's complicated. It's actually 4 or 5, depending on how you count it. The 5th one's kind of debatable, according to historians at least. And this is also not counting coup attempts. So you got the Reign of Terror, the July Revolution of 1830. That's the one from Les Miserables. How do you say it? Miserables. I'm sorry.
I literally just said it earlier. And you're like, how do you screw it up?
I said Miserables.
Yeah, sorry.
Les Miserables.
I'm going to go ask my wife if she wants to watch Les Miserables.
And then there's the 1845 Revolution, the Paris Commune of 1871, and the Free France movement, which was actually during the German occupation in World War II. I feel like that counts. That's just me.
I mean, it was a legitimate government that they had to overthrow.
Yeah. All right, so following the events of the French Revolution, Napoleon rose to power and in 1804 declared himself this title.
Oh, I remember this one. Emperor.
Yep, Emperor of France. That guy didn't have an ego at all.
I think I learned that from Bill and Ted.
Wow.
So although it's commonly believed that Marie Antoinette was quoted as saying, "Let them eat cake," this is actually a mistranslation. What was the original quote? In English, that is.
I'll let someone else go first because I think I listened to like 400 food podcasts, so I think I got it.
Was it can't they eat cake?
Not quite.
Damn.
Do you got a guess, Kory?
Yeah, I have no guess.
It was actually,
okay, so
you got this.
I think it's let them eat bread, but she was actually referring to a brioche style bread.
Yeah.
So that's what the translation is, cake.
Yep, exactly.
Right. So she didn't mean like with frosting and shit.
It's like a sweet breakfast bread. I guess a modern translation could be like the let them eat Hawaiian rolls.
Yeah, it's made with egg and sugar. It's a very fancy type of bread. At the time, I mean, you realize that bread in France is very specific. To be a bread maker in France, you can only make a 4 type of bread: flour, water, salt, yeast. So there's no other ingredients you can do for it to legally be called bread in France. Anything else is a pastry. So when you do croissants and stuff like that, when they add sugar and shit like that, it is a whole different ballgame. So at the time, other people, bread makers in France, because of the poor wheat production and because of money, they were adjuncting their bread with sawdust and chalk and other crap like that. So she was like, believe it or not, Marie Antoinette did institutionalize some reforms to get that changed. She petitioned her husband because of the poor. So that's when she's like, let them eat brioche. She was like, yes, let them eat the best bread. Let them have what they want. It wasn't like have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
It was literally like, no, get them what they want. Because she'd already thought this was the same battle she'd been fighting.
Yeah. She just didn't get it, unfortunately. How many people were killed by guillotine during the entire Reign of Terror?
5,000.
Okay. What else we got?
2,000.
All right.
What $1, Bob?
So you're all pretty far off. It was actually about 17,000 people who were officially executed, but as many as 40,000 were murdered throughout the entire revolution and aftermath.
What, because they just leave it in the square and people are like, oh shit, we can just kill someone right now? That's awesome.
Basically. I mean, this is also over the course of a few years, but still, it's worth noting that's a pretty big percentage of that country's population at the time.
Johnny, you don't go down there at guillotine, you're going to end up killing somebody.
But yeah, that's pretty nuts. hopefully we don't see anything like that in our lifetime.
Well, we don't have guillotines, but
hey, you can go to Home Depot and make yourself one if you're really inventive.
Yeah, I've heard you could build one for at least around $600.
Yep.
So,
well, I think it's about time for Chris's conspiracy corner.
Yeah, I don't know.
Conspiracy corner.
So, thank you.
If you want to talk about like something like flat Earth or something, that's
pick
a
a dumb topic and talk about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Birds aren't real. Birds aren't real is a good one.
Birds aren't real is hilarious, though.
What? Is that a thing?
Yeah, you know what?
Oh, yeah. So
Justin, that's
people
good.
say birds aren't real, and they're all cameras to spy on us.
Drones, yeah.
So, like, the pandemic was them getting the birds home to change their batteries.
Yeah. My wife thinks it's like the funniest thing ever. So for
I
some
like
reason,
it, though.
I don't know if it was an anniversary or whatever, but I got her a hat that says birds aren't real. And everywhere she goes, someone's like, what? And someone else is like, oh, that's awesome. You know?
Okay.
I thought it was a joke. Like, some people believe it, but most people look at it as like a really funny, stupid, like hilarious,
totally.
fake. So one of the things that we've talked about actually a few times over the last 23 episodes now, that's crazy. A lot of times during our conversations, it becomes about kind of the conspiracies surrounding that topic, like, you know, the moon landing and stuff like that. So conspiracy theories have been around as long as there's been someone with mental illness that can stand up on a box and scream news at people. People who are misinformed or ill-informed or just not informed, you know, coming up with their opinions on what they think happened. And I think there's plenty of that right now, and for all kinds of shit. Going back, you know, to really, I think it started in America probably most with Roswell, and then has just kind of that whole culture has grown since then. Right now we're looking at the QAnon stuff, which is, you know,
it's so batshit.
Flat Earth Society and, you know, all this crazy shit. So one of the main kind of driving conspiracies that QAnon kind of was centered around originally, at least, or kind of where it came to prominence, I guess, is the idea that there's this like ring of Satan worshipping, pedophilia driven elites, you know, probably all Democrats, who are in politics and media trying to like control everything and all this crazy shit, right? So the thing is, like, on these polls that they did about kind of the QAnon followers, 54% of people polled about it said that it was either true or they just weren't quite sure yet, which is really kind of terrifying. You know, it's basically half of, not just the people at QAnon that were polled, it was like Americans. So essentially half of Americans, or roughly, you know, 40-something% of Americans at least, believe that it's either true or maybe it's true. They're just not quite sure. They need that last piece of evidence to prove it. You know, and another thing is, like, a lot of people in that same group believe it was about 40% of them, Americans at some point that were polled, believe that there is a deep state minority working to undermine President Trump. You know, there's all kinds of crazy shit that they buy into completely. Now, either they actually buy into it, or I'm sure there's people that are kind of in there stoking the flame just to see what they can make happen. But it's just misinformation. And anytime that there's stuff where people have questions and there isn't apparent answers, or there isn't readily given answers, it's kind of like a breeding ground for conspiracies.
Well, and what's crazy about it too is that, like, if you have an extraordinary claim, you need some evidence to back that up.
Right.
And they're like putting the entire burden of proof on others, which is kind of insane. You know, that's not how that works.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes where there's accusations made and you're being requested to, like, I don't know, you can't even like defend anything. There is no defense for it. It's just, it's like, it's suddenly like a half of America apparently just believes it to be true without any kind of defense given or any kind of like rebuttal given. It's just like, no, this is it, you know, and there's certain influencers that they kind of follow the word of. And, obviously, at least right now, for a lot of them, President Trump is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, man, it just seems like the further and further we go along into this rabbit hole we've fallen into, the dumber and dumber the stuff that a lot of these people will readily believe. It gets ridiculous. I mean, it just gets absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think education's a big part of that. You know, like, you know, if you have an informed public, they're not going to be gullible to things like that. You know, if like you have an understanding of history and at least a baseline understanding of politics and how that works, like all of that is obviously not true. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I mean, to me, like something that, you know, a good conspiracy theory is like, you know, the JFK thing, because there's a couple different prevailing theories, but there's not enough publicly known evidence to support one or the other quite all the way to like a conclusion. So there's a lot of room for conspiracy. The moon landing is fun, although I do think it is kind of insulting, but it is fun.
The Russian moon landing is false.
The Nazi in the moon landing is true, though. They're still up there.
Yeah, I'm down for that. They got 2 movies to prove
but
it.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out there is like a spectrum of conspiracies here. And there's, a lot of things we can't prove, and some stuff is completely harmless, like aliens, Bigfoot, like who the cares? Like, you know what I mean? And maybe Bigfoot is real, who knows? But like, that's not hurting anyone at least,
Exactly. That's just like a hobby, right?
Yeah,
it's people who are searching for deeper truth or understanding or whatever for something that more often than not is probably nothing. But
definitely
with this particular topic for today, the QAnon group, it's such a significant portion of people. It's shocking to me how,
That's the scary part.
Even if it's a minority, how large of a minority it is of people who just like willfully accept stuff that's easily disproven. It's baffling to me. And then they can call it a conspiracy. It's like, screw you, dude. 2 + 2 = 4 is not a conspiracy. There's evidence there. A, B, C. It's not like, what if X? It's like, no, dude.
There is such a thing as reality. Come back to it.
Right. And I'm all for somebody trying to like, peek behind the curtain or see the code of the Matrix, so to speak. But this is nonsense. This isn't even, I wouldn't even call this a conspiracy. It's just people being ridiculous. It's like the lizard people thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's laughable. But the problem is when so many people suddenly believe it, it's like this massive cult of personality, this massive cult. I'm just going to call it what it is. This massive cult kind of sprung up overnight, and it's just bananas.
I mean, that's clear misdirection because Mitch McConnell is absolutely a turtle in disguise.
Watch out, you'll be disappeared. All right, so we're moving on to this new segment. We wanted to point out some epic wins of the week each episode going forward, because I wanted to, shed some light on maybe a few unsung heroes here and there.
Yeah, so this is a clickbaity headline. And to be honest, it's still not 100% verified, but it's not been fully debunked. But in 1866, 80 men went to war from Liechtenstein, and 81 came back.
wait. 80 left.
80 people,
and
then 81 came back.
Did someone miscount? Yeah. Like they picked up someone on the way back, or?
So this was part of the 1866 Austro-Prussian War, which I'm not sure if you've covered it before, but it was a dumb war between countries who didn't need to be fighting. Liechtenstein, which is, if you're familiar, is a very, very, very tiny territory within like Switzerland and bordered to Austria.
It's like barely a country, right?
It's barely a country. They sent their army, which is basically like the reserves of any other army, to guard a pass between Austria and Italy. And then when they were deployed there, the war pretty much ended, but they did nothing but sit around, drink wine and beer, smoked a pipe, and took it easy. The rest of the war was going on around them. They just weren't in any theater of battle. And then when they packed up and left, one of the Italians, although it could have been one of the Austrians they were with, decided to join them and come back with them. So not only did they not lose a single person, nobody died, they weren't even part of any kind of like battle to kill other people. They didn't kill anyone.
Yeah.
They brought someone home with them.
That's kind of awesome. Yeah, that's...
So we're hearing so many negative things, but like, hey, you know what? Army came back with someone cool.
Yeah.
So...
That's great. So my choice for this one is Bessie Coleman. In 1921, she became the first female African-American and Native American pilot, and the first person of color to hold an international pilot's license. This was in the 20s. Like, planes weren't even around for 20 years at that point. Unfortunately, she did have to go to France to get her pilot's license, because racism and misogyny here in the U.S.
I think that's crazy that she went to get a pilot's license, and probably when she came back, she probably wasn't allowed to pilot anything besides what she built or made, bought her own.
But yeah, she's a pretty incredible person. Definitely read more about her. So yeah, if you guys have any epic wins you want us to talk about, definitely send those to us. We're always up for questions, comments, corrections, or even hate mail. And speaking of listener feedback, we did get something from Rashid Dukes on Facebook. He said, Vikings were brutal, but were they as brutal as the Mongols? I actually think that's a great question. The thing is, like, you could run the numbers, just how many villages they pillaged or whatever, how many
mountains of skulls they built.
Like how many people they murdered and whatnot.
It depends what your qualification for the question is. Like what are you defining as brutal? Like if it's like sheer like sadism, that's tough, man. That's like, would you rather be eaten by a shark or an alligator?
Right.
Either one sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be invaded by either one. Let's start there. But I will say both cultures, as brutal as they were in warfare, they were also progressive in some ways, like ahead of their time in some ways, which is weird. There's a lot of those, like, it's sort of a contradiction, because the Mongol Empire had like freedom of religion and stuff like that. And then with the Vikings, you had like, there was much more of like an equal society between men and women. And even, they had the shield maidens, like women, fought in wars and stuff. And so...
Yeah, both societies are about meritocracy, too. If you actually proved yourself, it wasn't just based on lineage. If you did good things, you were promoted to do more good things.
Definitely.
But I feel like as far as the question goes, this is probably more on the receiving end, not the living there. So, I don't know. I've definitely read some brutal things, but I feel... and I'll be doing more research on Mongols here soon, but just on surface level, I think the Mongols would be worse.
Oh, yeah, easily. I'm with you. 100%.
I'm leaning towards Mongols too, honestly.
Yeah. So the only thing that I can say about Vikings is, in general, like what we mostly know as Vikings, they had a spat with the church. Yeah. So they would generally be more brutal, when it came in relation to church. Yeah. But for the most part, like, you can find genetic material from where those Vikings lived. And a lot of times the church would shoo them out. They would come back in and the Vikings would be like, this isn't worth it. We're leaving. But like, they would interlive with the people there. However, if memory serves, it was the Danish at the time, I guess before they were Danish, were the dark-skinned Vikings. And wherever they took over, there is no genetic material of their existence. There is historic material, but no genetic, meaning they slaughtered everyone. Yeah. They ensured that no one was left, and they established themselves in that area until they were forced to leave.
That's a good point.
So yeah, I am absolutely certain there were Vikings who were
just ruthless.
Yeah, who were just absolutely horrible. Honestly, because they didn't have that much of like government or like purpose for existing. Your average Viking was traveling. They were trying to expand. But these guys were very short-lived. But I think on the whole, because the Mongols had an established military, I feel like they were more
and they
brutal.
conquered like most of the world. I want to say like all of Asia almost at one point. Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, they were only turned back because the death of the leader. Yeah. I mean, like, they were going to steamroll through Europe.
Yeah.
They literally built a mountain of skulls as a warning to other people who did not give tribute.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
And wait, this is not a, oh my God, we built a 4-story tall. No, it was a mountain of 100,000 people outside of a village.
Yeah. That's... Well, okay, so I'm definitely leaning towards Mongols, but I think another factor worth considering is that a lot of the horror stories they're written by other people, especially in the case of the Vikings, because they, for the most part, didn't have a written language, at least for a few hundred years. From my understanding.
So Vikings had written language. They didn't care.
Record. Sorry. Yeah, that's a good point. They didn't record their history.
Right. There weren't any libraries.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of the stories we have were from other cultures.
Yeah, they did have Bluetooth.
Yep.
All right. So I think that's it. Thank you to everyone who wrote in for this episode. And as always, feel free to write us on social media to be featured on the podcast. Do you guys have anything you want to plug today?
Yeah, you can check out my podcast, which Eric is always a co-host, I suppose, over at anchor.fm. And you can search Comic Zombie. I believe it's actually anchor.fm/Comic Zombie. We talk about comic books, comic book movies, nerdy bullshit, in general, movies, all kinds of crap.
I'm Justin Aki. You can catch me on Instagram at SignificantOtterCo, where right now I'm currently going to be tearing out the van I bought to make into a camper van, so I might post some more photos tomorrow.
That's awesome. This is the cat bus?
Yeah, this is a cat bus. I bought a big old 2001 Dodge Ram van. I put a Totoro sticker on the back because it's painted gray and it's a big beast. I also wanted to call out Aaron Mankey's podcast, Noble Blood. The first episode being about Marie Antoinette and the time before when she was sentenced to death and between her death, it was about 14 months. And so she was in a prison. She lost all her hair. She was separated from her kids. So it's a very, like, it's the other side of the take. That's why I'm kind of more leaning towards she was a victim too, even though she was, spoiled.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like it's worth checking out.
Yeah, and if you want to check me out, you can either go to my website, Twimby Podcast. That's TWIMB podcast.com. You can find me everywhere on social media at Twimby Podcast. Episode 4 is hopefully dropping on time on Monday, where I will be doing a deeper dive into Osamu Tezuka's Metropolis, the anime. My last episode was on the manga, but it's not going to be strictly Japanese related, but that was my history growing up. So that is what I know the best. But check that out and watch my podcast bloom.
It's great so far. You're only a few episodes in and you already got it down. Like I want to say it took us like 9 episodes before, we even, and we're still figuring out the format. Like,
I have listened to, fortunately, like Shortbox and Straight Chillin' here in Jax. I've listened to a lot of their content as well as a couple of others like random podcasts. And it's one of those where essentially the reason I started my podcast was one day I was like, there are some things that I don't like about their podcast. I love them and I would absolutely recommend their podcast to anyone, but for my taste and how I like to present things. So then even the structure was the same, as it's like, what do I enjoy and what do I dislike about how they structure things? And I mean, it's still a learning thing. I'm not judging myself too harshly, but I definitely appreciate the input, but know that it's because I don't like something about Potter.
No, I'm an anime outsider. I don't watch anime. I still listen to your podcast because you are enthusiastic about it, that I will listen to your description of it. Hell, I listen to a sneaker podcast for that same reason, because I'm like, I don't care about sneaker culture, man, but I really like the podcaster host. It's a good guy. He gets good interviews too. So yeah, enthusiasm counts more than anything.
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
So throughout the season, we're going to have you, the listeners, decide on who is the most epic fail of history. And what we've done is we've narrowed down 12 categories of contenders to face off each month in this single elimination bracket, the bracket of fails. So yeah, before next month's episode, head on over to social media to vote for who you think is the worst, and let us know why. And tell us if there's anyone missing. We got Egyptian pharaohs, ancient conquerors, Roman emperors, American presidents, medieval kings, Vikings and warlords, infamous traitors, corrupt businessmen, bad generals, lost explorers, terrible dictators. Then we got a bonus category for just random fails, like just people who failed at life.
I'll point out to our listeners that Erik is an author. You got Chris, really likes comic books. Kory's an anime and a photographer. I'm a graphic designer. We're not sports people, so if this bracket doesn't make sense, we don't care.
Basically. Like I said, head to social media and we'll have polls there.
And make sure to share that you submitted and get some other people to do it for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's good, could be fun. We'll see what happens. I have a feeling that like Hitler's going to just end up defaulting as the top one, but it'll be interesting if someone else takes that spot. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time today. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll have you back on soon.
Anytime.
I think I'm forced to by gunpoint and contractual obligations.
By guillotine point.
All
right.
Adios, muchacho.
Deuces.
This has been a presentation of the We Can Make This Work
Probably Network.
Follow us on Twitter
@ProbablyWork for more of our questionable content.
Also, we have a website called probablywork.com.
Okay, I just hit go on mine, so if you get a bunch of filler, well, I'll trim my filler and bullshit. Actually, you know what? You might want to use it for something else. No, you're fine. You're fine.
All right. 3, 2, 1, clap. I think I was a little off, but it's fine.
And we're back. Thanks for listening to Epic Fails of History.
And we're back.
Don't stop recording.
Hello.
Okay, out. Fine, you want to be in or out?
It was always crazy to me how brutal France was. When growing up, like the stereotype in America was that there were a bunch of pansies.
Okay, yeah, my cat's not going to be in the room too, so if you hear me yelling at the cat, that's what it's going to be.
Okay. What were you saying, Chris?
Did you know that running zigzag to escape an alligator, like we were taught when we were kids, is complete and total bullshit? As a point of fact, it actually is making it significantly easier for the alligator to catch you, because they can turn a hell of a lot faster than people can, even while quote-unquote running with their stubby little legs.
Also, Kory, you're correct. I can't find a single price for a prostitute in 1780s. I've been looking, man.
I feel really let down by world history right now. Like, someone was not taking, I mean, we've got like stock prices and stuff for, grain prices for hundreds of years. I feel like that would be a commodity that people would have.
I feel like Benjamin Franklin would have known that. He took trips to France a lot.
I'm annoyed because what if this was on the James Bond episode? I would have to find a price for this. I would be really thrown off. I'm the numbers guy.
Don't stop recording. Maybe I should just hit pause. Eric, what do you think? Oh, I want to hit it so bad.
Drinking a beer, waiting for the link.
Well, this is exciting.
Man, looking at my levels, this thing's quiet. I love it. I like it a lot.
Did you know that the letter Q is the only letter in the American English alphabet that is not found in any of the states' names? Even Z, J, X, letters that are barely ever seen anywhere else. Texas, New Mexico, New Jersey, Arizona. Only the letter Q.
Say, the price of my love's not a price that you're willing to pay. You'll cry, your teary hurl in the sea when you see me go by. So sad. Remember we made an arrangement when you went away. Now you're making me mad. Remember, despite our estrangement, I'm your man. You'll be back. Soon you'll see. You remember you belong to me. You'll be back. Time will tell. You remember that I served you well. Oceans rise, empires fall. We have seen each other through it all. And when push comes to shove, we send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. Da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. I'm not singing again. Sorry, Eric. But seriously, look up Decimal Time. It's fantastically crazy.
We talked about Gundam.
Yeah.
Just racks up time.
Just for your information, the dot that you find located over the lowercase letter I or letter J, the little dot there, is known as a tittle.
Da 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 da.